just a heads up before we get started. We discovered in post that one of our mics had a jostling issue. We tried to edit around it, but we did not have the time to re-record it, and this was such a great conversation. There are some other episodes with a similar issue because we recorded many episodes in the same day, so keep that in mind. There will be a warning on those episodes as well, but this will not happen in the future. Thanks. Hi, I'm Crystal Joy.
I'm David Raz.
And this is On the Chair with Crystal.
And David.
You might have seen us on YouTube, but especially if you have not, please hang out with us because this is where we talk about personal stories and crazy bullshit that inspired the videos that we made.
Even if you haven't seen the YouTube videos, you can still enjoy the podcast. But if you want more context, go and check those videos out. They're fun.
Yeah, the whole point of this podcast is you can enjoy it without knowing who the fuck we are. So have fun. Welcome. Today on the chair, we are with Sultan Sketches.
Hi, Sultan.
Hello, that's me. I'm on the chair.
Today we're talking about the video we did with Sultan, which is, are you ready for a relationship?
Yeah.
Spoilers, he was not even a little
I
bit.
was not, no. I mean, we had been known, right?
You're like, this is not news to anybody.
Absolutely not.
For people who are just now watching, we do a lot of videos that are like survival type D&D type things sometimes that are based off of like a linear story, and those are often based off of true life facts. This one is a relational psychology test that a lot of the questions I got off of the internet and repurposed to make sense for me.
Mm-hmm.
But that does not mean that there wasn't a lot of like personal thoughts and opinions on relationships that went into it. So basically, David and I, for background, have been in a relationship for 13 years.
Woo.
Woo.
Which is like more than 10 for those at home.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And then Sultan is the single boy.
Yes.
So
The single boy.
we have
I love that introduction.
both perspectives.
Hottest commodity.
So you get like perspectives from someone who's single and then, you know, a couple who's been in a relationship for quite a while.
Yeah. I try to keep in mind, like, a lot of our friends are single, and I know that, like, it's obnoxious, low-key, that we've been together for so long.
Yeah.
So
Do you
whenever it
think?
comes to them being like...
Oh, some people think so.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
Because they're like, you guys don't understand what it's like to be single. And I'm
we
like...
we were together before Tinder and
Oh, yeah.
all the,
when we started dating, there were no dating apps like that. It
Yeah.
was like eHarmony on the desktop, and that's it. Like, there were no dating apps.
I'm
like
missing out
Tinder.
on nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm telling you right now. You guys dodged a really big bullet. But that's
So
so
I've heard.
interesting.
I know.
Like,
Yeah. So I guess we'll just kick things off with a fun question. What makes somebody ready for a relationship? In your opinion?
self-awareness. I think that's
Ooh.
the most important thing. Because everyone has their fucking issues, right? Like,
Right.
profanity. What's the go on that?
Profanity's fine.
Yeah, go for it.
Cool.
Profanity's fine.
Everyone has their shit. As long as you're self-aware, then that's, you know. Of course, there's boundaries and people like there's some things you can't compromise on. But yeah, self-awareness. I think off the top of my head.
I think that's genuinely a big one, if anything.
That's a big part of it. It also calls to mind the, did you watch Bo Burnham's Inside
I did not.
special?
No.
Okay, well, there's this whole little portion where he brings the self-awareness to light and basically is like being aware that you're an asshole doesn't make you a better person.
Oh yeah, agreed.
You have to use the self-awareness to change.
Better yourself.
A lot of people will be like, this is just how I am, because they like have realized they're bullshit, but then keep doing it.
Yeah,
At
right.
least
It's
from the relationship perspective of people watching people complain on TikTok.
yeah.
Well, we had a really good example of like people. This is a more personal story.
Yeah.
We won't put names for privacy purposes. I guess
If it's me, put my name. I don't care. If it's me,
it's
put my
not,
name.
it's not.
Drag me through the mud.
It's
just-
not.
Throw them and the wolves go.
I wrote in my little notes here for the podcast, our friends weren't ready for a relationship, but they could have been.
Yeah.
And that
yeah.
is David's very lifelong friend. He's known since
Brandon.
Brandon is his name.
Okay, no, not Brandon.
I feel like he would be offended that you called him Brandon.
I don't know.
What's wrong with Brandon?
He's not gonna listen anyway. I know, right? What's wrong with Sorry for all the Brandons out there.
I feel like he would just be
Mike.
like, I'm not a Brandon. I don't
Mike.
know. Mike. Yeah. He has Mike energy. Yeah, Mike. And his ex, Esmeralda.
Mike
That's
and
a hell of a name.
Esmeralda.
Esmeralda.
Yeah.
The couple that could have been.
The couple that could have been. I don't know. Just from the outside looking in, it was a
So
mess.
like I had a relationship with these two for a long time. I've known them for a very, very long time. And I was kind of like helping them work through some of their bullshit. And, you know, I could see from the outside in just what was wrong, like where the disconnect was. And explaining that to them, they couldn't get over their own egos to fix the situation.
Or their own like
And-
issues. You know?
Right. It was more like, well, they XYZ, and then, well, they did this. And I was like, yeah, but
And
it's
so
what
are
you
these
want
people,
in the
is this
end.
pre-relationship
Like,
or
so-
they're in a relationship?
They are no longer in a relationship.
They
They
were
were
in a
together.
relationship.
They were together for like 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was a while ago, but it's like we personally very much liked Esmeralda. So it's like the standard for us as a married couple when we vet Mike's girlfriends. It's like, but as much as they had their problems, Esmeralda was fucking dope.
Yeah.
A catch and a half.
Catch and a half.
Yeah.
And had her problems, needed to do her soul work, but so did Mike. Jesus fucking Christ. They would be like, oh, he said blah blah blah, and I was like, I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Mike needed some work.
Right.
But they outside of that vibed really well, and they're not still pining for each other. I think she got married to somebody else,
Right.
and Mike is now with some other person. But for a long time, it was like, but they're not Esmeralda.
Yeah.
But they're, you know, and you know what I mean? So that's a great example of like, I wrote, you can only show up for somebody as much as you've shown up for yourself. And if you have
Absolutely.
not done that, then the relationship's doomed to fail.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
100% agree.
You can have a great
Yeah.
thing that on paper should work, but if you have not done the showing up for yourself, you will absolutely ruin it.
Yeah. And that's a big part of what what happened in their relationship. You know, they just were using each other in a way that the other couldn't fulfill. And it just fell apart because you expect it and then it doesn't work out that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens when you try to find your value in another person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's I think that's one of the issues I like am constantly working on. I tend to put a lot of value on external validation, and that a relationship is not an exception at all to that. Which, I mean, it's kind of, you can kind of tell, right? When someone's in a relationship and they kind of place a lot of their self-worth on someone else, it's very, I mean, I think it's quite obvious when that happens because they are willing to,
Oh, yeah.
first of all, compromise on like core values and be like, oh, it's fine because, you know, I genuinely like this like connection. And if you're willing to like part ways with something that like you believe in, like if you're dating someone and they constantly do something that before this relationship, you're like, that's a no for me. And then it's like, you're in this relationship and you're like, oh, but they make me feel like, you know,
That's all right.
that needs evaluation. And that is a recipe for disaster. And also, that gives the other person so much power over you. And
Oh, God.
Like, right.
Yeah, 100%.
it's not a, it's
That can be very dangerous.
not healthy in my opinion.
Yeah, it can be very dangerous. The problem I feel like with that is when you give someone that much power over you, you really need to know them that too. You know, you think you do, but you don't really know a person fully in, I feel like, the amount of time you're giving it, because it's usually in new relationships that happens. You're giving them so much power and you don't really know them to the fullest yet. But also, relinquishing your own power for your own self is not something that's conducive to someone who's in a healthy mind state.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. You need to be able to have your own person and love yourself as well.
Yeah.
In order for that relationship to work.
I think that's what I always keep in mind whenever somebody's like, oh, I'm just a single, like, what's you guys' secret, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I know this is the most obnoxious thing to say, but you need to be happy single first. And nobody wants to hear that. Like, of course you guys would say that. You guys have been together since forever and blah, 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 blah. You don't know. You don't understand. But, like, it's it's annoyingly true. Like, if you are not showing up for yourself, if you're not happy and fulfilled in and of yourself, and it goes back to that puzzle question at the end of our video.
Question.
That was actually a portion that was taken from a stand-up comedian called Daniel Sloss. I did not actually get that puzzle question from the internet. He has this whole segment in his stand-up where he talks about how he's so proud that he has created multiple divorces with this piece of information. And I won't go into his whole bit. You can look it up, Daniel Sloss puzzle piece bit. It'll come up. But he basically says that he was told that everybody's life is like a puzzle piece when he was a kid, like a puzzle when he was a kid. And he asked, I think his dad or whatever, like, well, what completes your puzzle? He's like, well, the only thing that could ever complete my puzzle is your mom. Okay, bye. And that, like, at 7 was like, I need another human being to be fulfilled as a complete entity of a person. Yeah. And he's like, a lot of people are functioning in that mindset of like, well, if I don't have this final puzzle piece, then I'm not personally complete. And if you're functioning, that makes you go into these relationships that you have no business being in. You know this person's bad. They're not compromising with you. You're not compromising with them. You're a mess. They're a mess. But you find yourself in this like 5-year deep relationship for what? Because you don't want to be lonely. Yeah. And he's like, most relationships and marriages are just people who don't want to be lonely together.
Dude, yeah. Oh, there's this one like line in. You guys seen Tick Tick Boom? That like,
yes. Oh my god.
Right? So good.
Tick Tick Boom.
Loved
Make
it.
Me
we can fanboy about Andrew Garfield in a second.
Oh my
but
god.
There's this one line, and it's like, why would we rather go through hell than sleep alone at night?
Yes.
And yeah, I absolutely believe that people will stay in a relationship.
I'll start singing.
Yeah, it starts busting out and sing.
I will.
Yeah, people definitely do that. And like, fuck, I don't blame them. But it's not, I mean, I'm not endorsing that at all.
No, but you understand it. You understand where
I
it's
would
coming
never
from.
be like not empathetic and be like, oh, why are you still with that person? Like,
I do too. 100% understand it.
And even like aside, like the relationship topic aside, if you're like looking for happiness, that's when you like won't find it. like
that's
the
true.
whole like, oh, looking for like a puzzle piece and like there's a piece that I'm missing to be fulfilled. The second you tell yourself you're fulfilled, you are fulfilled because it's self-imposed. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
So if you keep, and it's 100%. This whole like self-improvement like thing where people always think like, oh, if I just get a little bit fitter or like if I just push myself and work a little bit more, like I'm not there yet. I'm almost there. But the second you just like are content with where you are, you're happy. Like that's it. If you stop looking for it.
Yo, I just read something last night about that.
Yeah, you did.
We won't go into the super detail, but I'm reading the parts of. Okay, so Jesus said lots of stuff back in the day. There's this whole group of books that they were like deleted, basically. Not allowed in the Bible for a lot of reasons. Right. They're called the Gnostic Gospels, but there's like a lot of shit Jesus said verbatim that's just not in the Bible. And one of them was like, woe to the one whose soul relies on the flesh for joy. Right. It also lines up with what I've been reading in this amazing book that I'm probably going to reference in almost every single podcast called Letting Go. It's such a good book. But it talks about how joy and fulfillment cannot be found outside of yourself. If you're looking for fulfillment in your circumstances, you're going to fail 100% of the time. Right. And for people who are in very dire or unfortunate circumstances, they get understandably very upset. They're like, fuck you. You don't know.
You don't know how it is to live in XYZ where
I think
I'm at
you
right
can
now.
find it, but it's very fleeting, you know? Like, if I'm like, oh, I will find happiness when I get this thing. When I get that thing, I'm going to be happy, but like for a second. And then it's like, what's next?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Because that's what it calls for, to constantly try to fill that hole when your perspective is that.
Yeah.
When your perspective is outside of yourself.
Yep. And it's also this, well, then we go into like the spiritual TikTok, like how manifestation works or whatever.
Can we get into it later? Absolutely.
No, yeah, like, but that it kind of touches on that, which is like the more you want it, you're not going to get it, because to want it is to not have it, and if you don't have it, then you don't get it, which makes no sense. But when you understand that it's an internal thing, when you have everything you need in and of yourself, you actually no longer want that thing, and then that thing comes.
Yeah.
And that's like, I was going to say
that plays
I
onto
forgot
what you
it
said
was.
before
I was
about
gonna
like
make
the second you're
a point.
happy being single. That's usually when someone appears, you know.
Yes, and I mean that's exactly what
Right.
happened with David and I. Like, we got together relatively young, but I moved out of my parents' house at 17, and so did he. We were completely financially independent, like kids, basically running around by ourselves, being wildly
guys
wounded and sad.
Had it rough for a while, yeah.
So for context, for people who don't know too much about us, I was homeless for a very short period of time, and so was David, separately. And so there was a period of time which I was like trying to fulfill myself with alcohol, or trying to fulfill myself with relationships, or with dating, or with whatever. And it was when I finally was just like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore. I need to be cool with me, because me finding it elsewhere is not working. So I remember the day I was like, I am done. You know what? Whenever the time is right, God, send me a person like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. Until then, we're chilling. I'm Gucci. I met David a week later, and he met all of those criteria. And that's like, I didn't know it at the time, but that's basically what the internet calls manifesting. I let it go. I said, this is what I want. And there he is.
I was not looking for a relationship. I had gotten out of a relationship and was a very toxic relationship. And it was like the worst relationship that you have to go through to learn so many lessons. Like that, this is my worst relationship.
Right.
That was that relationship that I was in. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm gonna be with me for a while. And I settled on a lot of my values, like you were saying earlier, in that relationship. And, life-threatening stuff, and, just all the dramatic, crazy stuff that you see in a lot of toxic relationships. And I learned a lot from it. And I was just okay with me, and wanted to focus on me. And then I met Crystal. Which was interesting. Because, again, we were not looking.
Neither of us were looking, but we were both very sad. And so we're just like, we're best friends, like, immediately. And it just kind of naturally
I'm sure not
happened from there.
I'm sure it's not as simple as that. Like, like I'm sure everyone has their hardships, and right.
Oh, no.
It wasn't as clean.
Oh, no, it was a mess. We'll make a video about it eventually. Like, I have a little plan.
It was a hard mess.
But, yeah.
Because I still had, that relationship gunk was still there. I still had to work on myself.
It was, that goes to my next note, was using relationships to distract or ignore from inner healing, and being comfortable with being independent is extremely important.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, but what if I never find anybody?
Oh, I hear that a lot.
Or
what if this is my last chance?
It was my last chance.
And they're like,
or
20.
they can't find happiness, which is going back to that other point. It's like going in a circle. But
I've heard that. What if this is the only person I'll get with? And they're like
20 something. Yeah, I know. Stop it.
Yeah, but there are like some people who their circle, like the pool of dating, is already very small. So for example, like some people who live rural. I love that word. It's so fun. Rural. Like people who have to date in a specific group, which like some people have their own like set rules for who they date and who they don't. So sometimes when the pool is already so small, it does feel like, will I ever meet someone like,
That's
you
fair.
know,
That makes perfect sense.
because like we've talked about this very
Yes.
briefly. Not briefly, sorry. We've talked about this in depth, a lot about like, you know, my circumstances and my exes and how my main issue is I don't know if I'll ever like find someone like
Right.
that because my pool of what I am willing to date is already very small. So
Yeah, that just reminds me of like it's easy when you are the age that you are, your brain can't comprehend that time doubled. It's like, oh my God, it's been so long to get to this point. My Jesus, like
How could it be?
how could I like go even longer, like 40 something or whatever? But the thing is, the longer you are alive, the more your brain perceives time differently.
Yeah.
And so the first
Yeah.
set of
Yeah.
years goes like exponentially slower than the next set of years. And I know it's like hard to, not just for you, for people in general to grasp, but it's like where you will be at like 30, 35, 40, 50, like
Could drastically
could
change.
drastically change. And love is not limited to young people. It's just not.
yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And so you
Yeah.
never know what could happen. I mean, it reminds me of that old C.S. Lewis quote. I mean, it was about like hurting oneself. Trigger warning, I guess, hurting oneself.
Yeah.
But it was an old C.S. Lewis quote. It's like, do not by any means ever destroy yourself, for you never know when the blessing is around the corner or something like that. When your life may change in an instant. Like,
That really sounds
Yeah.
Christianese.
well,
if
it's
that makes
C.S.
sense.
Lewis.
I know. It's just I don't want to downplay how dire that emotion is.
Yeah.
It's earth-shattering, world-breaking feeling of loneliness and feeling like you won't find anyone else. Mm-hmm. But again, it's that circumstance that quote kind of hits on is when you're looking at something so
Like
close
right
that
here,
looks like a
yeah.
wall. When you back out, you'll see the shape of what it actually is.
You see the bigger picture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the bigger picture. One of my biggest takeaways for relationships that you have been in, the experiences that you do have, I feel like you need to make the most of the experiences you have in those relationships, even if they're very, very bad. And what I mean by that is like,
Give them meaning.
what are you? Yes. What are you learning from these things?
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
not learning, you're going to go right back to that same
Yes.
relationship in another person or the same person.
Absolutely.
And you're gonna keep doing that
Until you figure it
until
out.
you figure it
Yeah.
out. And this is just for yourself, right?
Right.
Like if you're like, man, I hate chocolate ice cream, I guess I'll just eat this chocolate pudding. Like it's still the same
Right,
taste,
yeah.
you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
And also, like, anytime something goes wrong in your life, that's a lesson. Like, that's a lesson that you
Yes.
can, like,
Yeah.
if you sit in it and you're like, I'm miserable, I'm sad, you're valid, but you can also sit, be miserable, and be like, what did I learn from this? Like, can I grow from this? Every
Yes.
Yeah.
time something goes wrong, it's an opportunity to grow and to learn.
It is.
100%. It's an opportunity to take the moment to find the peace within yourself outside of your circumstances and apply that. moving
Absolutely.
forward.
And also, like, dissect yourself.
You don't want to. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Like,
What's that?
like, dissect the shit out of yourself. Like, when you
Oh, yeah.
are, like,
Oh, please.
emotionally charged, like, it's so easy to just feel how we feel. But remember, we are just an observer, like, of our, this is going to get very meta, but, like,
Yeah.
we're just an observer of our thoughts. And
Yeah.
it's, like, important to, like, take a step back
Yeah.
and actually listen to what you're thinking and be like, why am I thinking these things? Like, what?
That is, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to take that. I'm going to say, for people who might not have ever heard that before, that's like one of the key like things to understanding yourself is that you're not your thoughts. Your thoughts are just happening to you. So a lot of people identify so heavily with their thoughts
Right.
and so heavily with their like intrusive thoughts or they're like, what if thoughts spiraling? It's like, that is just an object passing your consciousness. There is nothing in this world that is outside of yourself, which sounds crazy. Obviously there is, I can sense it, but if you're sensing it, what is that sense going to? Your nerve ending, that's going to your brain. So without your mind, you can sense nothing. So there is only what is in your mind. And your mind then is an observer of reality. So it is observing. It's the you observing the you, which is in spiritual talk, it's like your higher self. It's like the you observing the you is being able to be like, oh, that's a thought about that. And that kind of passes by and now that's gone. It doesn't define who you are because of the thought.
Right.
You are actually the you observing the you.
Also, most
not the
thoughts
you
are
having the
subconscious. Like, you know, you go about your day and you're just thinking things. Most of the time, you don't make yourself think these things. It just pops up. Yeah, and it's important just to like sit there and be like, and most of the time, these thoughts are patterns, right? So like why breakups sometimes are so hard is because you just repeat the same conversations over and over in your head. Like, what if, and like, why did they do that? Why this?
Oh, God.
It's just your brain repeating patterns. So when you become an observer, you become, there's a word for it. I don't know.
I don't know what the word is, but I can say on top of that, you are no longer living in the moment. So where whenever your mind thinks about something, your brain can't differentiate between a memory or a rehearsed conversation and reality. So you're constantly living this conversation that did happen or hasn't happened yet, and your mind is there. So like if that makes you anxious, your body is going to start replying as though that threat is physically there.
Yeah.
And those things, when lived in a prolonged period of time, actually slowly break down your body. And you can start getting sick or XYZ or whatever. So that starts breaking you down, which it goes on to being like going back to knowing yourself is like, okay, well, when I'm observing my thoughts, I am not my thoughts. Oh, I'm having a conversation about that. What about that thought, the conversation that happened or conversation I want to happen? Why do I want that to happen? Or what about that conversation bothered me so much?
Right.
I can't control the other person, but I can't control myself. Why do I put myself in that position or etc.? And
that's super, I feel like, important. I feel like you do yourself a disservice if you don't allow yourself to try to understand that concept.
Yeah.
You don't want to be your own salt in your wound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to wallow and not gain anything valuable from that experience, which can happen, but that's up to you.
There's also those, I wrote down, there's also those like moments where it's like, okay, well, I did that for 2 seconds. I'm a better person and I'm improved. Oh God. Do I know a person who has done a little bit of work and they're like, wow, I'm perfect now. This is also a friend. In relationships specifically, like, I've done this work. I've admitted I can be, this person was like, I think I'm wrong sometimes. And then David and I were like, what? No way.
Oh my God. Can I just say, the more I learn about like myself and relationships, the more I realize how not there I am. You know, I feel like the more educated you get and the more like work you put in, the more you realize it's so much like I'm not walking backwards. Absolutely not. You should have seen me when I was 18.
Yeah.
I was like the worst person. And like, I've definitely improved.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all?
I've like definitely improved from then, but fuck, do I have like so much more to go. And like, I know the trope that you guys are talking about of like someone who's done a little bit of work and they're like,
yeah.
Okay, but I did it. So now what?
I thought I self-reflected. I did a journal entry. I meditated 2 times.
It's officially not my fault anymore.
It's officially not my fault anymore. I fixed it.
Going back to the video that we just did on your channel, the part when we're talking about a puzzle, right? And if your puzzle is complete, it means like you are fulfilled and you are content with yourself. The reason I said, and we made it a joke, but honestly, I'm half joking at this point. Yeah. The reason I said that's a red flag is because I don't really think we ever complete ourselves. We're always like working, right? If you think you're there yet, I don't think there's a there. I think we are always like constantly improving.
Right.
So if someone says they're ready,
and that's why it's a red flag.
Red flag. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
Then exactly. That speaks to their position of I don't need to better myself. You need to better yourself.
Unless they're like, you know, a priest or something.
No,
like a renowned
everyone.
like not priest. I don't want to
Like a
you know, I don't
guru
mean like
or even like the enlightened people.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like even they have
Of course.
their shit. I know this is not just personal opinion, and I don't even know if it's about relationships anymore. It's about ego, but to reach nirvana or enlightenment, it is to completely kill your ego and to so supersede the point of desire and blah 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 blah. And I can see where
That comes in.
you no longer want it, so now it's here because you are fulfilled in of yourself. Sure, but I personally think there is no killing the ego, because the ego is what keeps you alive.
Right.
In a lot of cultures, there's this idea of the selves. There's a higher, a middle, and a lower self. The lower self is your physical body, your middle self is your psyche, and your higher self is that you that's observing the you.
It might be controversial, by the way.
But that's just my understanding of how I don't know everything. I'm still reading multiple books all the time. Like, I could change my opinion eventually. But right now, as living in 3D reality, as living in the reality as we perceive it currently, if you kill your ego, you no longer are alive, because your ego is there as a survival mechanism to perceive your reality. So I kind of view it like a dog. Like, dogs are great. They're really sweet. You can have a really harmed, angry dog that's like rabid and bites everybody all the time. Or you can give it love, you can give it patience, you can give it structure, and you can have a really great buddy that helps keep you safe. But
so
you
taming
are not
the ego.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's taming it and then yielding it and knowing that you are not the ego. You are not the word I. You are this like observation of consciousness.
Right.
And when
But
you get
your
there,
ego could be your best friend too.
ego can be your best friend. Like, you can be in this copacetic, like, it's like, oh, a dog go bow wow wow, bow wow wow. It's like, oh, hey, we talked about that. Remember? Oh man. And they're like, oh shit, I do remember. And you're like, okay, here's a treat, buddy. Good job.
But they also warn you of danger, right?
Yeah, they warn you of danger. And
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. I've like makes sense. I've just never thought of. I always see the ego as like a bad thing, right?
And that's what people teach online and like
Yeah.
spiritual TikTok and all this stuff. Ego is so bad. No, like, it is a beautiful thing to express interests in the world that you find yourself in as it pertains to your senses. And that's exactly what it is.
I also think it can be a extremely good indication of self-love if you tame it well. For those of you who always put yourself second.
Yeah,
Funny.
specifically for the people who put themselves second. But to say that you don't have an ego, I've overcome my ego, is ego.
Yeah.
That's a spiritual trap, and that's what they call spiritual bypassing. So it's like everybody has the ego. If you're alive and you're breathing, you have one. I'm sorry. Like, you have it under control. You are aware. You know that's tricks and tips and have trained it royally, but it's still there. So to say, I don't have an ego, so I'm a guru now and I'm enlightened, it's like, oh, that's your ego, kid. You're still running an ego perception. So
there's also a difference, I feel like, between ego and humbleness, obviously, but when you have it in that sense, there is I am something that is fact, right? And then there is, like, if I am good with working with wood, if I'm a carpenter, I am good at this. That might not be ego, that might be it just is. I am good with this. And you shouldn't diminish that, right? But also, and that's why I think ego can come in and be healthy.
Yeah.
But I think it's a difference between I am this.
Correct.
and I am superior to other people.
And I am superior to other people.
Like, this makes me better, or this makes me more aware, or whatever.
Right.
Like, that's a trap. Like, that's the trap of the ego. But I think it's a beautiful thing. I think instead of having only higher self, only you observing the you, only self-awareness and la-di-da and rainbows and going to heaven and blah, 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 whatever the fuck it is that you believe. I think it's the unity of the flesh, of the psyche, and of that special you in the present moment, because the present moment is where the only semblance of understanding of what we have in this moment of what infinity is, because there is only ever the present.
True.
You can only ever experience the present. So to be fully present is to be fully in your physical body, fully observing your reality with your psyche, and fully appreciating it in gratitude and love with your higher self, is this unity of yourselves, which then kind of lets you peek into what infinity looks like. And
which is pretty deep. Now you're trying to say, is this still about relationships? Yes.
It is.
Relationships with yourself.
With yourself, which is honestly what
Yeah.
it's honestly what it gets down to. If you're not in this kind of relationship with yourself, God help you if you try to
Yeah.
get into a relationship with somebody else.
Not to though. Again, life is funny.
Yeah.
Go be in
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
Learn. Yes.
Go learn. Don't like be like, I need to
Oh,
be perfect
no,
before I'm in
don't
a
do
relationship
that.
or else
No,
it's
no,
gonna
no,
fucking
no, no,
fail.
no, no.
Like, no. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
I just want to warn against that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Go get experience. Go fuck up.
Well, you just got to ask yourself, why am I doing it? Am I in this relationship because I'm afraid of my own thoughts? Am I in this
Yeah.
relationship because I like fixing people? Am I in this relationship because of whatever the fuck? Or am I in this relationship because this person brings me joy and they're nice to be around and I understand my shit and I'm willing to accept their shit? And, you know, like, I'm okay in and of myself and I would love to involve this person.
It's like this constant state of
in
improving
my-
yourself.
Yeah. You can improve
Yeah.
together, which is the semblance. Trust me, David and I were not figured the fuck out 13 years ago.
Yeah, no, at what, 19, 18?
Yeah, I met at 19. You were 20.
Oh, that's right, I was 20.
Yeah.
Like, no, definitely not have it all figured out. Promise. So, and we're still going. But again, we are evolving together, constantly reevaluating ourselves,
Yeah.
constantly like, you know, trying to improve ourselves.
Right.
And
We touched on it in the video about
Yeah.
compromise and about growing together. At the same time, you don't want to date someone. You don't want to date the idea of someone or like what you've created in your mind. That's a
Right.
recipe for disaster.
Right.
Disaster.
Yeah.
So you have an experience. Your answer was, you know,
Yeah.
on one side of it is accept the person as they are, right? That was your answer at the time. Do you want to touch a little bit on
Yes.
what experience that you experienced that made you say that?
Yeah. So I dated someone, and it was good for like a few couple of months, and then it kind of got to the point where I felt like I was a passion project. You know, like I felt like I had like a third parent, like someone who was like, you know, trying to change the way that I dressed and tried to change like my hobbies and like where I spent my time and you know, like
Right.
and there's a way to go about those things, right? Because I know like
Right.
that inherently isn't really a bad thing, but to get upset with someone because they won't like change certain things, and it's like, hang on,
Yeah.
I've been like this. When we met, I was like
yeah.
this, and you told me that's cool, and you told me I like that about you, and now all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like an issue. That I have a problem with, right? To date someone and to be like, you know, like, yeah, we're dating and I love you, but change these things. Like, it's a bit of a...
Oh, yeah.
It should.
100%.
I don't know, it rubs
and
me
that in and
wrong,
of itself,
like,
for the person who does it,
a lot of the
they have
times.
their own, like, in their upbringing, like, psychological, like, need to fix people. I was one of those people. Yo, I was the definition of a manic pixie dream girl when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God. My whole personality was like, I'm here, you're sad? Wow, I can be
gonna
quirky
fix
and
you.
funny, and I can fix you and make you happy. God.
Was that who you were as a person, or like you saw that
I was just
personality and you were
that.
like, I want that?
The manic pixie dream girl stereotype wasn't a thing back then. I'm old. 2010.
When did New
2010.
Girl come
2010.
out? 'Cause that's the
2008,
big one, right?
2009 that I was like that.
Yeah.
So it's before Jessica Day really
right.
came out and was like so fucking cute.
She is very cute though.
She's super cute. I do too. It's a really good show.
I love that show.
But
It's my
before
favorite.
that was like this hyper like overdone thing. There was this like, I was so unhappy in and of myself. So my joy came from like fulfilling somebody else's needs. And that comes to my upbringing and the we won't even go into that, but like the psychology of how my brain was wired as a child is to make other people's emotions the most important thing.
Yeah.
And it reflected as a young adult, as a teenager. And it just, and also just in general, I mean, I was a teenager in 2006, in 2007. So just being cute and quirky was the thing that you did. And so I just, that on top of the deep need to fix people, it's just like I was a manic pixie dream girl completely unironically without being told to, and I had to be like, oh, I need to worry about myself and not make somebody else be this way that I want them to, or like that I want them to be, or that I see your potential and you could be this thing.
It's mostly
Look,
potential.
this is the joy that you can have. Look, meet your full potential. And some people just don't fucking want to, and that's okay. Don't force people into, I don't know, becoming what they're not ready to become.
That too. I think
Yes,
go ahead.
agreed. No, and also like I was someone who grew up with like conditional love,
Same.
and so unconditional love is like extremely important to me, and that kind of ties in, and that probably explains why I like accepting people how they are, and I like to be accepted how I am, because if you put conditions on this love, that's triggering for me. Like that's my thing. Like that's the thing that I can't do. But I get it. Like I understand compromise is absolutely a thing, and you do grow together, and like you see it, right? Like when a couple has been dating for a while, like their like values and morals kind of like mesh together and not become one person. I don't believe that, but like they complement each other, you know?
And that's how it should be. I think a lot of people can't comprehend of that concept because it's so foreign to be so individual while also being so together with somebody else. And man, oh man,
have we heard it?
Have we heard it?
I think touching a little bit on what you said, Sultan, I also had that kind of upbringing, a very conditional.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we bonded over when we first met, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And so I think I can feel exactly how I can understand you when you say, you know, don't condition my love, because then you don't love me. Actually, you don't really love me.
Yeah.
Right? And I think why it worked out with Crystal in this sense is because she began to do that fixing thing for herself and loved herself, right? And began to fix it. But I already had that in me too. Like I want to improve myself.
Yeah.
And so when she was trying to improve me, it was things that I already wanted.
Yeah.
And so I was like doing that. And I also did things to improve her.
Yeah.
And so it then began.
He brought it to my attention. It's like, hey kid, you also have a lot to worry about. Maybe love yourself. And I was like, oh fuck.
So
shit, you're right.
In that sense, that's how it works.
It's not black and white at all.
Yeah,
like, it's a very gray area. And I do believe that dating someone, I read this somewhere, but I'm going to quote it wrong, so it's going to sound stupid. But like when you date someone, they tend to become a mirror to who you are as a person. So like, for example, like, and it's the reason why, like, you know, you have like best friends that you've been friends with for 10 years and you don't fight as much. You probably have a few fights, but you don't really fight as much compared to like someone you've been dating for 6 months. The reason is it's because like family, sometimes they do it, sometimes not, but friends, when they like notice things about you, sometimes they just don't like bring it up, or they might not even notice because they don't get to know you into like an intimate level, right? Like, so most of us, like, we're by ourselves and like we sit with ourselves, and then once someone else gets brought into our circle and they notice things that we probably have never even noticed about ourselves, and they're like, hey, here's the mirror, like, this is you, this is what you're doing, this is how you're reacting, that can be good in a sense of, it's again like a opportunity to grow and to learn about yourself. However, and like me, this is me, right? Like, this is my red flag. When I was younger, I would take that like as a personal attack, like, oh
yeah,
but this is just, and like, okay, see, I can see how like I'm contradicting myself. I'm like, that's me as a person, you know? And so that's what
that's how we're conditioned to view things.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying when I'm like, you should accept people as they are, but it is a gray area in the sense of sometimes we are just told things that no one has ever told us before, and it's
and that is, it creates this reactive, like, it's what people call the inner shadow. Like, it's this, like, I'm not that, but you tend to, the more you deny it in yourself, you project it onto your whoever you're around. This person is being this way, but it's really just you don't like that you can be like that yourself.
Right.
And so especially when it's brought to your attention, like, hey, this is a thing, and it's not even brought in malice, you're just like, the shadow has like a little light turn on in there, and you're just like, no, that's my dark place. There's nothing in there. Close the door.
Yeah.
Like, that's not me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't-
But it
don't do
does
that.
like
But-
it is sometimes people just genuinely like oh, like I don't think I'm that. Like, why would you say I'm that?
Yeah.
Well, exactly. It can either be this visceral, like, shut the fuck up, or it could be this, like, what? No, because never in a million years could I ever embody that, because it's what I've deemed to be an unacceptable
Undesirable.
and undesirable
Yeah.
feature of a
And
person.
that circle back
Which is
comes
the
to
shadow.
self-awareness, right? Like, if you are self-aware on your
Yes.
problems, when someone holds a mirror up and says that's your problem, if you're self-aware, you can be like yes or
can be
no.
like, yeah.
And the more self-aware you are, the more accurate.
And if someone says, like, if someone was to go to you, Sultan, and say, you know, your purple hair is dumb and it's purple and it's stupid, you wouldn't, like, I don't
I would say, how did you know that I dyed
Yeah.
it down there? Like,
did you know?
sorry,
I thought I
you
was
handed
keeping
it to
a
me.
secret.
I had to.
I guess the last, like, we're just about done, but the last little bit that I had written down was talking about the insecurities and reactive responses to the test part, where it's like, write down the things that you like or don't like about your partner. And then the other person doesn't do that.
Yeah.
I just said, well, okay, first of all, we didn't really get to talk about it afterwards. What, like, how was that part for you? Like, did you
David really
what
showed
was
me up at that
revealed?
part, eh? That's like, there's a single guy and a guy who's like in a relationship, and then you see both our answers, and it's like, oh, makes sense, eh?
Damn it. From my experiences, you have a thought, and then I'm aware of myself in that I can know where that thought can go. So initially, right, I could see our thought processes being the same, like, oh, you're writing shit about me, what the fuck? And then it's like, well, that's my initial thought, but I don't know yet. So we'll see. And if I know that person,
Right.
which I do, I'd be like, it's probably not that. Or I'm
It's
just
either probably
curious.
not that, or it's something that's like, so, like, I don't know, we are
It
so
wouldn't be
communicative.
hurtful.
It would be something like, bitch leaves her socks on the floor,
Yeah,
keeps leaving her pants in the bathroom,
Which is something
does
that I find
not
funny,
clean out her
right?
brush, like,
Yeah.
like stuff like that.
So I'm like, oh, what is it?
So I would be like, I also would be amused
Right.
to be like, what's on the list?
It's not gonna be like, you know, I fucking hate
Right.
the way they laugh.
they laugh or some shit like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And I'd be like, damn, that's hurtful. Why would you say that?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Right. Oh, what's that thing Crystal does? It's like when you take your clothes, when you
rapturing?
change your clothes,
Yeah.
you just leave
You
them on a
rapture.
pile.
Yeah.
And rapture.
That's-
Yeah.
I do that.
Like, what's this?
I mean, that whole portion also goes back to what we were talking about the shadow. It's like this, like, in the ego as well. Your ego just peaks, and it's like this thing that's like, I'm great and I'm perfect, and then somebody's threatening my great and perfectness, and it's bad. It's living from a state of fear and defense rather than a state of reception and self-acceptance. Because if you are in this constant, like, be self-aware,
Yeah.
understand my bullshit, and work on it, because that's also very important. You can't just know. You have to also work on it. To have somebody bring it to the table, you're like, oh shit, no, I want to know because I want that to be sorted out. I don't want to be away. So let me hear what it is.
Yeah. So I tend to not avoid conflict, right? If there's like an issue, I want it to be solved. Absolutely. However, and this is something that I'm unlearning because I watched the video recently on like
Yeah.
romanticism and how we as like a people don't really see love as a skill. We just kind of like we kind of want people to just know
Right.
what to do, whereas it's like
It
a
is.
skill. It's like, so because like my love language is when people understand me without me like saying anything. That is like peak pinnacle, like best relationship is like I walk into a room and they go, oh, you're feeling this way, why? Or like, oh, you want this, and I didn't even say anything yet. Like that to me is like where it's at. And so when conflict happens and like when I get upset over things, I used to like expect them to just
read
know
between the lines and understand
like,
you.
oh, can't you see? Yeah, like can't you see I'm upset? Can't you understand? Like, why should I explain this thing to you? You should just know. That's something I'm unlearning, because no one's in your head except for you.
And the thing is too, Sultan, I think we developed that, because I also had that. I think we developed that because of our conditional love. So we had to see when maybe a parent or a family member wasn't okay.
Had to be observant.
And we had to know when they were feeling a certain way. And we were able to do that, so we expected other people to also do that.
Right. And so the reason... And at this point, I'm just trying to justify my terrible answer. But the reason why I like wouldn't bring it up, and then if we got into a fight later, I would bring it up, is because I tend to not tell people when I'm upset. Like used to. I'm still learning, right? But I would tend to not tell people what I was upset about, because I would just hope that they would know.
Yeah.
And then when we do have a conflict, it's like,
you didn't even
well,
see
shit,
this.
we're already talking about this, like also blah blah blah, and like that's really bad, and that's something that people should not do, right? Like if you have something to say, if something comes up, I absolutely believe that you should air it out on the table, in a very like clear, precise, like healthy communicative.
Thank
you. in that way, right?
And I think that's where the scale comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because
yes,
you, as a person who is trying to communicate, can deliver a message that is helpful in the wrong way. And the person receiving it, if your objective is to communicate, the person receiving it, you need to be able to communicate it as I'm doing a great job right now, communicate it in a palatable way for that person to receive what you're trying to say to them,
right?
With the outcome that you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah.
Like if I want you to be upset, then sure, then it worked out. But if I wanted there to be harmony, but also something to perhaps bring to your attention, then that needs to be said in a trusting, loving way that is receivable for you to accept that.
Right. Especially when it comes to like values and like that's like the thing that people really connect with. And so like when someone's told, hey, this value that you think you have, you could kind of improve on it a bit. That sometimes is like heartbreaking to people, and why people get so defensive.
Yeah.
It's like, that's all I have.
And they're like, that's not me.
That's our identity being bound in perceptions. So like, or opinions. So if you really stick to you are not your thoughts, you are not your opinions on how you've seen reality so far. You are this observer of the consciousness. When something like that comes to be challenged, it's not a paradigm shift or a paradigm breaking thing, because you have not built who you are on this passing temporary thing.
Right.
Our opinions and thoughts change constantly depending on the stimuli and information that we have at the time.
Yeah.
So if you're functioning constantly out of that place, like a place of love for yourself, if that gets brought up, you're like, I wonder why that happened. Let's get to the bottom of that for me, and not feel threatened. What tends to happen is if you bring up something like this conversation might be triggering to some people, because they might be very deep in the depression circle, and like, now you're saying that I could get myself out of it with my thoughts. You don't fucking understand where I've been manically depressed for like 4 years at a time. Therapist defined. So it's like, I do know where that's coming from, but it's hard to, it's threatening. It's like, I'm not doing a good enough job. You're perfect exactly the way you are. And I think that's what so many people are not told enough. Like the Mr. Rogers, fucking make me cry. Like at the Mr. Rogers thing, he always, like did you ever see the documentary about Mr. Rogers?
I don't think so.
If you want to cry, watch that shit. Basically, well, the main thing that I'm talking about was that he made it his point to every single child that he interacted with. He looked at them in the eyes and said, I love you exactly the way you are. And so many people aren't living in this, like, I'm okay in and of myself.
Right.
I don't need this paradigm or opinion to be a whole or accepted or loved. So it's okay if that paradigm gets shifted or my perspective needs to change a little bit, because my ego is in check because I've trained it. So now I can work with my ego to improve and to be more loving with myself.
This improving, right? It's not just like, oh, I'm not good enough kind of thing. It's only beneficial for you. When you're doing this shadow work, when you're doing these exercises that help improve you as a person, you're not so hurt all the time.
Yeah.
You're not angry all the time. Those negative emotions that you wish you didn't feel that cause you so much pain can be relieved, and that's why it's bettering yourself. And it's really for you when you're doing these things. It's not just so you can be the perfect partner for someone else.
No.
No one really likes feeling these negative emotions.
No.
You know, like having the whole like, do I even deserve to be loved, or like, oh, I should be this way instead of that way. It's really fucking taxing on someone.
Yeah.
And it's like it
It is.
changes the way like people think. And I guess like going back to what Crystal said, the main thing that you should take away from this is like everyone deserves love, regardless of who you are, how you are. Everyone deserves love. And you do not need to be a certain way. You do not need to look a certain way to be loved. And
you deserve to be treated the way you want to treat somebody else, which sounds like treated this way you want to be treated. But like so many people pour so much into others and then treat themselves like shit.
And that's why the loving yourself is so important.
If you would do that for in love for another person, you need to do it for yourself. And if you're defaulting to that other person first, then I don't know.
Yeah, but if you do like, because I get it, making other people feel good about themselves, I get that. But I can guarantee you, if you start prioritizing yourself and start working on yourself, you're gonna, like, again, a byproduct of that is the people around you will feel that. You will have more energy for these people. You will have more capacity, mental capacity for these people. And again, that's like a byproduct of improving yourself is quality of life around you. And that includes the people 100%. That you love. And it's almost like if you want to make, like, let's say you're someone who's a people pleaser. If you want to please them even more,
100%.
Start working on yourself.
100%.
And then you get to please people more without actually being a people pleaser.
The last little interesting thing is like there is a byproduct of that happening where somebody's like, well, I was trying to work on myself and this person made it a problem and blah 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 blah. That person also needs to worry about themselves. That person has nothing to do with you. And if you are working on yourself so that you can love others better, and somebody is like, you're the villain, you're the problem, how dare you break the system and not do this thing that's, you know, away, blah blah blah, because you're worrying about loving yourself, that is a sign that person is not meant to be in your circle, no matter who they are. No. I know that can be hard, but
I cannot tell you. Yeah,
go
sorry.
Go for it.
I cannot tell you how many times I've heard someone start their self-help journey, and they start saying, as soon as I started, people around me started like dropping like flies. And it's because you start to realize, like, first of all, you stop compromising on things, and you start to realize, oh, I guess like sometimes I just accept these things that aren't actually good for me. And it can be hard because sometimes it's like friendships that you've been oh, I swear, like this, I was just on a trip in Queensland and I saw like a bunch of YouTubers. It was an amazing time. And I won't name names, but someone they were friends with their friend for like years and years. The friendship went sour, and it was one of those things where it's like, I love this person so much, and I don't know why it went sour when I started to do good for myself.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It really does. Like to find out like sometimes love. It sounds bad, but like sometimes love isn't enough.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
So many people.
maybe that's a bad way to put
Well,
it.
No,
it's
and
not-
that makes perfect fucking
That makes
sense.
perfect sense.
I think so many people, I guess I can't speak to that, but I can try to shine a light on the phenomenon of why that's so common.
Yeah.
It's going everything that we've just said. Almost nobody is doing this. Like almost
Well, I will
nobody
say,
is thinking about their shadows and about their pain and about why they have people in their lives. And
I will say it's becoming popular to do it, so more people are doing it.
More people are doing it.
But yes,
The common, when I say
Or at
not
least the surface
almost,
version of
when
it.
I say almost nobody, I mean like we're in a bubble. I'm on a bubble on TikTok, and that's the way TikTok works and the way the internet works. And so like I'm surrounded by this constantly, but a lot of people fucking aren't.
Yeah.
The most people fucking aren't. So they haven't even started to think about, oh, why do I do this thing and why do I do that thing? And oh, maybe I'm functioning because I brought up in an upbringing of a childhood or a traumatic event that happened that makes me wanna whatever. People have no idea they're functioning out of that place.
Yeah.
And it's like they're autopiloting from like in a broken plane in the mud. And then you're just like, why am I not going anywhere? It's like, that's probably why. And then if you bring it up, they're like, no, my plane works perfectly. Shut up. And the thing is, you can't worry about other people's planes in the mud. We're just going to run with this metaphor, I guess. You can only worry about yours. You can only get, oh, fuck, my plane's in the mud. Let me get it out. Let me clean it off. Fuck, it's broken. Let me go to the store and figure out what parts and learn and get the manual and figure it out and then fly away. And people see you flying away and they're like, ugh.
You're just gonna fucking
You're just
fly?
going to fucking fly away?
Gonna leave me?
What? And it's like, you are not responsible for another person's journey.
Your plane was easier to fix than mine.
Yeah. And you can't control that. You can only worry about yourself and give love, but you cannot fix it for them. Being aware that everybody's on their own journey and knowing that it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. It's like when it's time to fly away, you can just look at them in the mud and not be like, ha ha ha. But it's like, oh, you know what? I love you and I don't think it's helpful for me to be around at this moment. But when you do get a little bit more figured out, I love you and I'll be here.
You can give.
And people can't handle that.
Yeah, I think
People cannot handle that.
it's like and it also like if you do want like a little tip to like tame your ego, the second you like realize you can't control people's reactions, but it's only your own actions, that's when like things just like become easier, you know, like because some people when you do self-work, like the friendship breaks apart because, you know, like sometimes it can be like a bitter thing or like a jealousy kind of thing. But sometimes it's just like you do change as a person and your values change. And this person is like, I actually vibe with the other one, right? And you're like, oh, that's cool. You're allowed to feel that way, but I don't. I don't vibe with the old Sultan. You do, but I don't. And they are more than welcome to like leave. They have the right to. But you also have the right to be content with that. And
Yes.
Or to, even if they're not aware, to see that that change is happening and being like, this is no longer conducive to what I want in people around me. And not even in malice, but like out of love. It's like, I love you and you're like this and that's okay, but I can't be around that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. David had one more.
I have
like,
one more little
thought.
anecdote, which was that you could have all these right things to say, but if the person doesn't trust you or they don't know you, you can't, like everything that you say, which is right, it won't land.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of important in relationships is that in that communication, that trust has to be there to know that I'm not saying anything in malice. Of course, that's part of the delivery too.
Yeah.
But as a person who's open to fixing themselves, whenever something is said to me and it's brought correctly, I am knowing that it's not in malice. It's truly for my benefit. And that helps me get over my shadow.
Yep. And also, this is not kind of what you just said, but just a fixing. We've said multiple times, there's nothing wrong with you, blah, 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 blah. I want to change the verbiage from fixing. Even from healing, because that implies that you're broken, to leveling up, to becoming the best
Right.
possible you. Like, you
Yeah.
can be good. It's good. We're going from good. We're going great. You know what I mean?
We're going good
more
plus.
more
Good
like
plus.
aligned
Like
with
S
what
tier.
you like, who you want to be, right? Yeah,
What you want to
Yeah.
be.
Exactly
More-
what you want to be. I think a lot of things.
just
Well,
like more
No,
like
no.
I
who
like that.
you
More
want to
aligned to who
be
you
in
wanna
your
be.
head, put it on, like getting it on
Mm-hmm.
the outside kind of thing. Yeah,
Making it happen.
right.
Getting to be that person. And
I like
those are the things that help you get there.
Yep.
Less linear, more cube.
More cube.
You know what I mean? Like, you're here, you can be on this side of the cube, or you can be on that side of the cube, flip the cube over, you're back here again. Like, we're just in a different part of the cube.
You
Like, we're
see
not
yourself as this
linear.
Cube.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Good job, team.
Anyway, good job, team.
Good job, team.
Wow, we solved the world, everybody.
We actually solved some stuff here.
We solved everything,
God.
guys. Good for us.
Wow.
Nobody will ever be sad that
There's
they're not in a
sad people
relationship
after
ever
watching
again.
all
We did
of
it,
this.
guys.
What do you mean?
You guys can see our videos that we did with Sultan. Sultan has a video that we did with him. It's amazing. If you have not
Yes.
seen it on YouTube,
Okay.
Please go check it out.
if you're somehow watching this podcast and you found us randomly and you haven't seen our video, it's a great fucking video. It's
It is.
very funny.
Very good times.
It's a really
Um,
good video.
We post this podcast every time we upload on YouTube, which is
Yep.
once a month. So the next episode will be up a month from now. And I don't remember what episode's coming up next, so I can't tell you what that's about, but it'll be a good one.
If you want any updates, you can go follow us on Twitter at
On the channel.
on the chairpod.
Or you can follow our personal things where we talk about all the things that we do anywhere at the Doodles, which is at the DOOTLEZ.
At the DOOTLEZ. Sultan, where can they find you?
Where can they find you, Sultan?
In a box, man. You can find me on YouTube, Sultan Sketches. I'm also on Instagram. That's the only other one I really use, to be honest.
At Sultan Sketches.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
At
Sultan,
Sultan
it's all Sultan Sketches across the board. If you're looking
Yeah.
for me on TikTok, Twitter, just search it up. It'll hopefully pop up.
Yeah.
And you better go follow him.
Yeah.
I'll find you.
If
Yeah.
you
All right.
want.
Okay. Till next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.